Well, welcome everyone. So today we're going to be talking on the subject of sex. So as you know, sex itself comes with many terms and lots of different ways of saying it. Things like lovemaking, coitus, intercourse, bonking, shagging, the wild monkey dance, business time, that sort of stuff. So we're going to focus on the word sex today to incorporate all of those lovely little aspects of it. But we also don't want to take away the specialness that there is for what lovemaking and sex actually is. So we're not making light of the subject, but we are going to be talking a little bit about different things in it. So before we even start, we want to ask you guys a couple of questions, and we'd love you to just in the comments section, if you could just write your answers for us. Some of you who have dealt with us will know the answer to these questions because we ask it a lot, but just bear with us and answer the questions for us. So first question we'd like to ask you
is, which countries do you think have the most sex and why?
So there's two. There's two, just to give you a hint.
There's two.
There's two.
So put in the chat group which countries you think have the most sex and why.
We'll give you a second. Let me open my chat.
France, Italy, City of Love, USA. Yes, lots of people.
Australia. Well, down under, you know, so I don't know. No, that's New Zealand. They like the sheep.
I got it wrong.
India, Brazil.
Well, India is seriously populated.
Italy, America, Africa. Yeah, well, Africa.
Nigeria, Brazil.
France. Brilliant. Okay, so the actual answer to this is
Italy and Spain.
Italy and Spain. And the reason that it's Italy and Spain is because those are the two countries in the world that kiss the most. So believe it or not, the kissing side of it is what encourages the sex side of it. So any kiss that lasts longer than 6 seconds is a kiss with potential. So the chances of it leading to something is much higher. If you think of it, sorry, I'm going to just add on here. If you think of it, when you were dating, how much kissing, or should I say not dating, because we don't want to encourage things before marriage, but when you first got married, how much kissing took place and then led on to other things. And as the years progress in your relationship, the kissing becomes less. And then what else becomes less? The sex becomes less. Okay, next question.
So the next question is, how often do you think the average couple has sex? And we say average because some people can be more than average, some people can be less than average, but they take all the averages divided by the amount of people. How often do you think the average couple has sex? Put it in the chat.
Is that per week or like?
It can be
however you want it to be. Some people
per year, if you even want to go per year. But
there's 2 a month, 3 times per week, 3 times per week, 2 times a month, 6 times per month. Yes, some people are very, once a week, 3 times a week.
Okay.
Lovely. 2 times, 2 times, 1 time. Let's see, once a week, once. I hope that once isn't once in a lifetime. I hope it's like once a week or something, because we don't want that to be the case. All right. So the answer to that is that we are looking at the average amount of sex that couples are having is 2 to 3 times per month. And this was done on a study of something like 16,000 couples. So now they've got a good average across the world as to who's doing what and who's not doing anything.
So this came from the study. It's the Natural Survey of Sexual Attitudes and Lifestyles. So
if you want to go look that up, that's where it comes from.
Okay, and so the next question we're going to ask, and also you've got to put it in the chat, is what is the average length of time couples spend having sex?
The average length of time you think couples are having sex?
3 minutes.
45,
5
30,
minutes,
15 to
15 to
20.
20 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 30 minutes,
5
seconds.
seconds.
Yeah, no, that guy's very excited.
Patrick, we like that,
Very
Patrick. 5
excited.
seconds.
That I can't wait.
There's no 6 hours here, luckily.
15 minutes, 3 minutes.
Okay, so the answer is 45 minutes, 3 minutes,
3 minutes,
15
15
minutes.
minutes. Okay, so the answer to this is, believe it or not, is 18 minutes.
Oh, wow.
18 minutes. So it's not the 3 minutes that everyone thinks it is. And if your mates are telling you it's longer, they're lying. Because it's probably, they're also only doing 18 minutes, but they'll tell you they're doing 2 hours or something of that nature. So yeah, so that's it. And then the last question.
So our last one is, how often would you like to have sex? How often would you like to have sex?
I like that comment, Kenneth.
Okay, 3 times a
3
week,
times per week.
4 times a week.
4 times a week.
Twice a day.
You say, love.
Whenever it's possible, I'm with you. 5,
What is 3.5 times a week? Did you get interrupted at that 0.5?
You made it halfway.
Yeah.
I know.
You either got tired, interrupted you.
Once a week, every second day. Okay, so the answer to that is very
Generally.
interesting. Generally, it's very interesting that the average person will say that they would like to have it 3 times a week. And the fun fact on this one is that 40% of women wish that they were having more sex than what they are having currently. 40%. So it just shows that there's a discrepancy between men and women wanting to have sex.
Okay, so we want to have a look at some interesting facts about sex. Okay, so we know that men think about sex more than women, but the average is a ratio of 6 to 1. So they think about sex 6 more times than women, and people are having less sex nowadays than in the last 2 decades.
Yeah.
It could be due to work stress. It could be due to
All sorts. There's so many factors that play a role in that. And research shows us that a higher percentage of people are reporting sexual problems, with just over half of women, 51%, and 42% of men report sexual problems. You know, especially for the ladies, such a thing as a lack of interest or a low libido that they feel that they are lacking in that area, a lack of sexual enjoyment for both male and female. And then, of course, there's pain or erectile dysfunction for the men, which lasts longer than, if it lasts longer than 3 months, then they fall into these statistics. So in 2024,
No, 2004.
2004, that's it. In 2004, a study by an economist at the Dartmouth College and at the University of, what was it, Warwick, I think it was, Warwick. They did a study of also a few thousand different couples, and they actually found that the happiness equation was higher, that if you went from having sex once a month to having sex once a week, it was the same as if you got an increase of $50,000 on your salary, the happiness indicator. And if you had a sexual relationship with your partner that lasted long, it was calculated out, I think it was about $100,000 of happiness equation that you had if you did that. So meanwhile, on the flip side, if you had a divorce or you went through some trauma in your relationship, it translated to unhappiness, a depletion of $66,000 annually. So that just shows you how important sex is to a man and a woman.
And so you might be wondering why any of this matters. Like, sex is just sex, right? It's not a life or death matter, but actually sex is way more important than what we give it credit for. Hundreds of medical studies have proven the benefits of sex. So it shows that there's a longer lifespan, there's a better heart health, a healthier immune system, a reduction in chronic pain symptoms, it dulls migraines.
Did you all hear that? It dulls migraines, just throwing that out there.
Yeah, so maybe the headache.
Maybe the headache. So if the wife says, I've got a headache, say, I've got the solution.
Yes. It dulls arthritis, it dulls back pain, it lowers the rate of depression and stress, It's an excellent form of aerobic exercise. It raises your heart rate and it lowers your blood pressure.
Yeah, yeah. And in a study, they've actually discovered that when a woman or orgasms reaches the point of climax, her brain actually goes silent. So the brain regions responsible for everything like self-control, moral reasoning, judgment, those things all dull down so much when they're in that intense moment of arousal. But then other parts of the brain fire up. Things like the oxytocin, which is the love and bonding hormone, gets released at 4 times more than the average when they are in extreme arousal.
So I want to tell you a story. So our daughter Alison, she's now turning 19 and she's studying occupational therapy. And I was having a look at her textbooks when she before she started. And the one section of her textbook explains how when there are certain disabilities, when there are certain issues, how they can overcome them with various sexual positions and that kind of thing. That's how important sex is to us.
Yes. Yeah. So if we have a look at it there's so much when doing this research thing. We tried to have a look at how many books there were available on sex. So we Googled it and we theoried it, but even Google and Siri couldn't give us a total amount because that's how many books are out there. We even discovered a book that says becoming cliterate, not literate, cliterate. We didn't read the book, but it had a very interesting title. So maybe we should delve into that later. But yeah, so we'll have a look at that.
Maybe you should delve into
Maybe I'll delve into becoming cliterate. Okay, so the majority of couples, let's be honest, all of us have difficulty talking about sex. It's not a subject that is easy that we speak about. And it comes from blueprint, it comes from our childhood, it comes from what our parents have said, what society have said about sex. So, it's not easy. That sex and finances, those are the 2 subjects that are very difficult. And I wouldn't really call them hot date night subjects, except the sex side. We'll get to that. Okay. So research shows that couples talk about sex have higher levels of sexual satisfaction. So if you're talking about sex, you actually have better sex. So learning to communicate about sex is so, so important. And if you think of it, I mean, you're a husband and wife. You've had a child, you've had 2 children. You sort of know each other quite well. You sort of have an idea how each other's bodies work and how things work. So I always use this example. So people that have come to my house or have spent some time with us know this example. So if you come to my house and I say to you, would you like some coffee or tea? And you say, yes, please. And I say, what are you going to have? I'll have a coffee, please. How many sugars do you take milk? If you don't ask, if I didn't ask you those questions, what type of coffee or tea? So you might not be a tea drinker. I'll make you a cup of tea. You might not be someone that enjoys sugar and I'm loading 3 sugars in. Or that type of thing. If you don't talk about it, then you're not going to get what you want. So talking about sex actually leads to sexual freedom. So remember, without communication, we become isolated. It's like, so we become isolated both sexually and emotionally from each other because we're not talking about it. Okay.
And then you get grumpy with each other and you become resentful towards each other.
So if we have a look at it, so sometimes what will happen is, especially in the sexual side of things, if you start talking about it, your one partner will say to the other, I didn't know you thought of it that way. And the other one will say, well, I didn't think you thought of it that way. And meanwhile, you've made up these ideas in your head, how your partner thinks about sex. What are they thinking about different positions? What are they thinking about different things to do in the bedroom? And now you haven't discussed it. So you think, no, they're not going to be interested in that. But the minute you mention it, they go, yeah, I could quite fancy that. And it's a thing by, there was a therapist called, I think his name was Gregory Bateson. And he came up with this, and it's called the difference, which makes a difference. And the difference is talking about things. You've got to chat about sex. The person who initiates the sex in the relationship tends to have a higher level of sexual satisfaction than the person that's following the one that's initiating the sex. So remember this. I'm just going to remember this, ladies. The person that initiates sex has a higher sexual satisfaction. Throwing it out there.
Shut up.
Okay, so you've got to have a conversation with your partner. You must talk to them about intimacy, but it's not always that easy. So we're going to sort of chat a bit about that.
So how do we start when we feel so uncomfortable starting? Where do we even begin? And so we encourage couples to start having conversations with the lights off, because then you can't see the blush. You can't see if the head is blushing, if the face is blushing. You can't see the blush.
So Roselda, just switch the lights off.
Yes.
And then maybe you can see Kenneth glowing in the dark. We're not sure.
It also helps if you have one person in the relationship that is the driving force. But if you don't, then you can play tag. You can go, okay, well, I brought it up first last time. It's your turn to bring it up this time. But in our relationship, Kevin was the driving force behind this. He would not leave this conversation alone. Like, I don't know, two, 3 times a week that he would be, okay, let's talk about sex. I'm like, but we've just spoken about it. Nothing's changed since then. And he'd be like, no, let's talk about sex. And I'd be like, oh, and we'll talk about it just now.
So I was a bit like a dog with a bone. Excuse the pun.
Yes. Yes. You get it.
Yeah.
Yes. The other thing that we encourage is that you turn communication into a game, and you play, it's the hot or game, the same game that children used to play, but we call this the hot, warm, and cold. And you direct your partner to the most enjoyable places. You like being touched. And then what happens afterwards? You say to each other, what was hot for you? What was warm for you? What was cold? Like, what could you buy? Like, I couldn't really, that didn't really do it for me. And so that's what you do. And then the other thing that we've come across that we encourage as a way of talking about it is all the way from Temu. We bought a game like this. It looks like this. We're going to share the screen
quickly.
So we bought this game from Temu. It's called Intimacy 150 Prompts. And here are some of the cards inside the game that it has. Look, it does go quite, like it does have quite some deep issues, but you'll see on the right there that this is definitely a game from Temu.
So the one on the far right there in the middle says, what do you wish more often our sex? So you can see there it's more of in. So as you can see, it's definitely Chinese, but it's worthwhile having a read of these things because it's good fun. And these are questions that you can ask each other just to start lightening the mood a little bit, just to start getting you into talking about sex. Because in our experience dealing with the couples we've dealt with, you will not believe how high the percentage is of couples that have had children and they still can't talk about sex with each other. They can't. It's an embarrassing subject, or it's a taboo subject in a sense. So they don't have the freedom to actually communicate this with each other, and they are actually losing out on what intimacy is.
So now the interesting thing is, what do you do? How do you communicate with your partner if you're dissatisfied with the intimacy that you are having? So which one of these scenarios do you think would win the prize? Okay, so Kevin's going to be partner number one.
Okay, all right. So I come home and I'm not frustrated because I feel like a little bit of...
No, just do the...
I won't do that. All right.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll say something along the lines of like this. So what is going on with us with sex? It's been a month and I don't know how long it's going to carry on for. It's robotic. It's predictable. I don't feel anything in it. You're killing me. Let's learn to do sex better together. That didn't sound so great.
That didn't sound so great. The tone was bad. The body language was bad. The words were bad. It was all bad. But if you had to look at, say, partner number two, and partner number two says, you know, I've been feeling like we haven't been connecting for a while. And I'm so used to that connection, and I'm used to that intensity. And I know, like, we're going through difficulty, and I know it's normal and understandable with life being life, but I'm missing you, and I'm missing the things that we used to do, and I'm missing that passionate side of us and that connection. Like, how can we get that back? How can we get back to what we're missing? What are you missing? What am I missing? So which one of those do you think will win the prize?
We'll get a response. First one will be getting, you know, there's a saying, you know,
goodness, no.
Is the saying, you know, the wife closes up like an old kitchen door, you know. So the first response is
Clever.
going to get that one.
Clever.
The second response might get a bit more
Yes,
warm. I'm
shut up.
just saying, I'm just throwing it out there. Then there's another concept that's called giving each other the scraps. And if you think of it this way, we create a habit of coming home from work. We've given everyone at work our best. We've smiled, we've been polite. If you go to a party with your partner and there's all giggles and everyone's laughing, and then that person gets in the car and it's like the giggling person left behind at the party and some other person got in the car with us. And then you barely make eye contact. You barely talk to each other.
That's especially from work as well. Like
Especially from work, your mind is still on
stress.
work, there's stress, all those sort of things. So that's, and then what do you give your partner? You give your partner the scraps of you instead of giving your partner the best of you. And if you're going to give your partners the scraps of you, how's that partner going to relate to you sexually? How's that partner even going to contemplate having sex with you?
Mm. The other thing is a number of studies that demonstrated the power of distraction on sexual arousal. And researchers have actually done a study. What they did was they wired a study. It was a group study. They wired both men and women to devices and they measured arousal. And what they showed, they showed the one group just plain sexual stimuli, and the second group had sexual stimuli, but they had to wear headphones, and they were given verbal instructions, and they asked the participants to repeat out loud a sentence that they were hearing. And what they found was that the more complex the distraction, the more it negatively affected the sexual response.
Yeah.
And so the most important thing we have to realize out of this is that distraction turns off arousal.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I want you in your chat, in the chat group, I'd like you to write down, what do you find distracts you, both when it's leading up to intimacy and both when you're having intimacy. So I'll give you some examples. For instance, like work stress, children, screens, scrolling on your screens, a to-do list, pets. So those, I'm just throwing some of those things out there. So let's have a look what comes up in the chat. The children, 100%, absolute. No one else gets distracted. Only one person gets distracted. Oh, wait.
Kids.
Kids, yeah. Pets, definitely, 100%.
Yeah,
Wicked
work
kids.
kids scrolling. Fun. I love it.
It's memories, yes. Wrong music, yeah.
Thinking about work,
Children,
yeah.
mom-in-law, that was a definite passion killer. Pets, lack of finance, yeah. Work, yeah.
To-do list, yeah.
Lists, yeah.
Father-in-law.
Having gate key, yes. Yes. No. Stress, work. Yeah, no. So all of those things. Now I'm going to give you just a little thing here that was so funny that we found in our research. So since 2020, this is the researchers think because it was COVID, everyone ran out and got themselves a pet, a little dog or a cat or something. And one of the biggest distractions when people are being intimate with each other, believe it or not, are the pets. And you can, I mean, I love my dogs there, I really do, but they are distractive. They are.
Our dogs are not allowed on the bed.
On the bed, no.
But at bedtime, so there's a blanket that goes on the bed. The dogs are allowed on the bed with. But then when they go for their last wee and then they come inside, they've got to get on their bed. But our one dog will just know.
It knows. I don't know how it knows.
And so we've got a little footstool in the bedroom, and so she will sit on that footstool. And then you get the impression you're being watched.
Because she's watching.
And so, like, pets are a big.
Pets are
thing.
distraction.
And so what do you do if they sleep on the bed with you? Now they're grumpy, they're kicked off the bed.
Off the bed.
So then you kick them out the bedroom, and then
you close it off. Then they're scratching at the door.
And yapping at the door. And now you're worried that they're going to wake up the kids.
Yes.
And so you let the dogs in, and then they're scratching to get up on the bed. Like, it's a major distraction.
So animals are a problem. So just you take care of the pets, make sure that they've got some other place to go to when it's that time. And another thing that is going to distract you, believe it or not, is your thoughts. So sex happens in the body. It's a physical thing that happens between a man and a woman. But if you think of it, where does sex actually start? It starts in your mind, in your brain. And the problem with that is, if our brains aren't totally engaged in that moment, we're not enjoying the moment to the fullest. It's like if you go on holiday, for instance, and you're sitting watching a sunset, but it's the most beautiful sunset, but you're worrying about an email that you read half an hour ago. Are you really enjoying that moment? No, you're not. Okay, so you're starting to have other thoughts that are intrusive on where you need to be. So 90% of people have non-sexual thoughts during sex. So, which causes them to have a narrowing of focus. And when you have a narrowing of focus, it blocks everything up. So all of a sudden you start focusing on this issue instead of focusing on your partner. So thoughts are another big thing that we need to try and get control of.
And then if we look at how women are as well, like women are multitaskers. They like do it without even realizing that they do it. And so life means that you've got to multitask. But when it comes to sex, that's the last thing you should be doing. Because good sex involves being fully in the moment. It's concentrating, it's feeling, it's being intentional on being in the moment. And so what this takes practice. It's when a thought comes in your mind, you go, no, no, no. I'm enjoying being in this moment. I'm enjoying feeling. I'm enjoying being. I'm enjoying being present in this moment.
And it takes practice. You got to work at it. You know, it's something that doesn't come. It's not something that comes just naturally. It takes practice. And then if you have a look at it in that aspect also, when you have expectation on having sex plus pressure to have sex, it equals a total passion killer. None of us like that. Men or women don't like that. So expectation can lead to frustration, because if your expectations aren't met, there's frustration that follows on it. So we should be talking more with our partner about things and not making these expectations. I don't know why, and I'm generalizing, I'm broad brush painting here, but in general, men have this idea that their women can sense, their wives can sense when they are in the mood. The wife can't sense anything else around anything else during the day, we don't think, but we think they can sense that. But they can't. We have to realize that we have to tell them what we want. If you are not communicating about your feelings, it's going to lead to disappointment for you and frustration. So what we try and say is, on a date night, you know, we love date nights. We are advocates of date nights. We believe in date nights. We tell all the couples, please, please, please prioritize date nights. But please don't prioritize having sex on date night. Because what happens, it's Wednesday night, it's date night. The kids are off wherever, at the grannies and grandpas or the uncles and aunts or friends or wherever. Now it's sex night. You got a retrenchment letter the day before. Your wife and you sat and chat about this. Now you're on date night. You go to a fancy restaurant. First thing the wife is thinking about is, should we be saving this money? Because now you've been retrenched. You're thinking, how am I going to provide for the school fees and all of this? What are we going to do? We can't live off of just one income, her income. We need my income too. All of these things are playing on your mind while you're on date night. Now you're going to come home, and you're going to have passionate sex, because now it's date night. You're not going to have passionate sex. In fact, you're not going to have great sex at all. You might have sex, but please do not have sex for having sex sake. That is not a recipe for good sex. That is just, it's not great. Rather, read the moment. And if that is, then you prioritize being sexual with each other, sexual intimacy with each other. Rather, lie with each other, have a bath with each other, shower with each other, cuddle naked. If it leads to sex, fantastic. Please don't think we're not saying don't have sex. By no means. I advocate having lots of sex. But so please don't think that. But just read it, read the room, read how your wife is feeling with those things.
And if you prioritize sexual intimacy, you're going to have more sex.
Yeah, you will.
You're going to have more sex.
Absolutely. Kiss for kissing's sake. Cuddle for cuddling's sake. Be naked with each other. Get naked. Lie and watch a movie naked together if you want to. Well, if the kids aren't there and the gardener's not mowing the lawn, just read that room too. But just make sure that everything is safe in that area. Okay. And then, guys, we need to learn how desire works. And ladies, too, learn how desire works. You know, there's different types of desire. We'll talk about that now, but we need to learn how to understand the desire that we're going to have for each other. Spice things up a little bit. Same old can feel quite suffocating in a relationship. You know, your wife knows you get that look on your face, you know, and she knows you get that step, and she knows the minute you put Kenny G on and he's starting to play saxophone, it's business time, you know, and that type of thing is not conducive to great sex. Yes, you might have sex, but you want to have great sex. You want to approach. You don't want to approach intimacy the same way every single time. You want to make it good. Okay. So some of the things that we need to have a look at here is we need to have a look at what are turn-ons and turn-offs. So turn-offs, particularly for a lady, I'm also, please, I'm broad brushing up. Please always remember I'm just doing a generalization. Some ladies are different, but the majority of ladies do not want to feel like they are mothering another child in the house, because that's a huge turn off for them. Picking up his clothing, packing his stuff away, looking after the kids on her own, doing the house chores on her own while he sits and does nothing. All those sort of things are a huge turn off to a lady, because they don't want to have another child in the house. They've got the children to worry about. They don't want to have another one to worry about. Okay, remember, love is kind, but it's not blind. She can see when you are putting in the effort, and she can see when you are acting like a child or not acting like a child. So remember that. So one of the biggest turn-ons for ladies, believe it or not, comes with some scientific facts behind it.
Kevin loves the story.
I love the story. The story, I love the story. Who did the story?
Jimmy Evans.
Jimmy Evans told this story because he's a fantastic guy to listen to. So in any case, at the University of Pennsylvania, they did a study on, I think it was about 300 married couples, women from married couples. They brought them in, they connected them to all sorts of instrumentation. They checked their heart levels, their blood, how they're functioning, how the brain was functioning, everything, all these different things on. And they wanted to test for the levels of desire in a woman. So what they did is they took some sweat. Ladies, don't gag. But they took some sweat of the partner, and they placed it just here on the top lip, so that they could see what this did to the woman. Of course, the researchers didn't tell the ladies that they were putting sweat here. They said it was some kind of a household product. And of course, when some ladies did find out that it was sweat, some of the researchers did die. So we do thank them for their sacrifice for science, but they did have the sweat on their upper lip. And what they discovered was that this actually caused the ladies to feel more relaxed. They were happier, and they even felt more romantically inclined.
So you know what I take from this? I take that sex equals, sweat equals DIY around the house. So if you do more DIY around the house, you might get more sex.
Yeah, so let's interpret these findings for everyone. So women found their husbands more attractive when they were working around the house and sweating a little bit. So gents, a little hint for the day is you are one clean house away from the night of your dreams. So today would be a good day. It's a Saturday. Polish, clean, sweat a bit. It's on tonight. It's on.
I tell you, I actually don't even know how to move on from that. Like, that story is just so bad.
I'm sweating as we speak.
So what I want to ask you is, I want to ask everybody here, do you feel that you've got a sexual voice? Do you feel like you've got an erotic voice? Do you feel like you've got sexual awareness? And if you don't have that, then that's okay. How do we increase our sexual erotic awareness? How do we increase it when we feel like we've lost it and we feel like it's never going to return? And all too often what happens is we take things for granted. Yeah. You know, those moments of beauty and sensual beauty in our daily experiences, we get into such a rut that we're driving down the road and we don't look around us anymore. We walk into the house and you don't stop to see if there's a flower in the garden. We don't open our eyes to those things. And what we have to do is we have to start becoming more aware of them and asking ourselves more of what they mean to us. So I'm going to ask you to do something silly, and I'm going to ask you to close your eyes for a moment, and I'm going to ask you to picture these things.
So picture it in your mind, eyes closed,
Yes.
breathe in through your mouth, out through, no, in through your nose, out through your mouth, wrong way around. Relax a little bit and answer these questions.
So
To
how
yourself.
do you feel like when you've just come in, it's been raining outside and you are sopping wet, and you can get into a nice hot shower or soak in a nice hot bath, and you just lie there and enjoy that warmth? Or how do you feel when you are slipping into freshly clean sheets, or a freshly clean made bed with like clean duvet and pillows? And well, how do you feel when you smell freshly baked bread? Or when you walk up to a flower and you take a sniff of it and it has the sweetest smell? Or if you wake up in the morning and you don't need to go anywhere, but it's raining outside and you're snuggled and warm and you're cuddling with the person closest to you, like, how do you feel about that? Now keep your eyes closed, and if I ask you how this feels, how do you feel when your partner rubs your arm? Or how do you feel when you've had a hard day or doing whatever, and your partner gives you this nice long hug and says to you, it's going to be okay? And how do you feel when you're snuggling in bed and it's just the two of you and it feels like time's been full? Or if your partner gives you a back massage and they don't expect sex, it's just a back massage? Or how do you feel when your partner rubs their hands down your back when you're not expecting it? Or when your partner plays with your hair? And so you can open your eyes now. We get so busy with life that we forget those moments of connection between the two of us. It's the little things. It's those little sexual bits for our attention. And it's the little things like that that feed our erotic awareness. And if you start looking for the erotic awareness moments, that is going to start feeding your desire. And that leads us into the next chat. We're going to chat now about desire. It's one of the things that Kevin and I get so excited about, because we've got it wrong.
Yeah.
We've got it so wrong. When we first met our partner and we first started having sex with them, the desire was instant. We were there and we couldn't wait to be with each other. And that's the idea that sticks with us for life. We've constantly been shown by movies and TV and social media that that's how desire works. The clothes are strewn everywhere. There's no time to get to the bed. The kitchens are havens for all sorts of fun. And if you don't have that, then something's wrong. Then your libidos are broken. We think something's wrong with us. We're popping libido boosters by the dozen, and we're hoping for the best. But the truth is very, very different. I'm going to tell a story about Kevin and I. We were sitting upstairs the one day. Kevin was on the bed and I was sitting we had a big fat sack in our bedroom, and I was reading a book. I'm reading a book. My mind is in this book. And Kevin looks up at me.
My mind wasn't
Yes.
in the book.
And Kevin looks up at me and he goes, my girl.
She was looking particularly fine that day.
Yes. And I put the book down and I go, yes, love. And he goes, are you in the mood? And I'm like, is that your idea of foreplay? Like, is that like, am I supposed to receive that by osmosis? That is like, at that moment, I must rip my clothes off.
A man is allowed to take a chance.
Yeah, and a chance he did take.
I failed like a Spitfire in World War II, but yeah.
And so what we've got to realize is that there is a difference in desire between two people, and that is normal. That is not in itself a problem. And what happens is desire happens between two people. It's not in one's own body. It happens between two people.
And there's actually two levels of desire, two things of desire.
Two different
types of desire. And like Michelle explained to you, the first one is what they call spontaneous desire. So spontaneous desire is exactly that. When you first got together, oh my goodness, You came home, the door opened, you were on top of each other, the clothes were left, right, one shoe flew out the window, you were trying to make it to the bedroom, you didn't get there, the passage floor was fantastic, comfortable enough, and that was spontaneous desire. And we've all had spontaneous desire, and some of us had spontaneous desire. But over time, unfortunately, spontaneous desire does die off, particularly, and I'm broad brushing, but particularly for women. It takes between about 12 to 18 months for spontaneous desire to die off in a marriage, in a long-term relationship for the wife towards the husband. Men have a tendency generally to keep spontaneity going until the age of about 162, I think it is. Round about there, it starts to wane at about 162. But in general, women from 12 to 18 months lose that spontaneity, that spontaneous desire. And it's very sad for me when I thought about that, because this was a revelation to me, to be honest with you, when we did the study, because I sometimes felt that there's something wrong with me, because one, I want my wife. I look at her and I want her. She looks at me and she loves me, but she doesn't want to rip my clothes off. She doesn't want to jump on top of me. She doesn't want to, I don't know, bite my ear off. Not that that's what I want you to do, just throwing that out. Those type of things. And it actually made me think that there might be something wrong in our sexual relationship, because, intimacy would happen when we were together and we were alone and that type of stuff. But it never reached that point where she was ripping my clothes off anymore. And that was the spontaneous desire that kicked in. So on average, understand, gents, that if spontaneous desire happens from your wife, it is rare. And I mean rare, very rare. Even the science behind it, it does happen.
Like you're on holiday, there's no kids around.
No kids.
All
Saturn aligns with Jupiter, it flies around Mars, and it heads off to Venus. And then, so they do happen, but they are very, very rare. So that's the bad news. The good news, there's another kind of desire, and it's called responsive desire. So I don't know if you've ever experienced it when you have sex together, you're lying there afterwards and you're going, why do we not do this more often? This feels fantastic. That is responsive desire, because it's built up to that desire that you have for each other. Okay. So if you have a look at responsive desire is linked with a thing that is called sexual currency. So think of it as a currency, a physical bank account, for lack of a better word. Okay. And sexual currency amounts to the amount of sexual charge or sexual interaction that happens between a man and a wife. So for instance, if I walk into the kitchen, I walk past Michelle and I rub her bum, or I rub her back, or I kiss her neck or something, and then I carry on with the day, I carry on walking around doing whatever I'm doing, I have created a little deposit into the sexual currency bank account right there. Michelle might come past me while I'm busy working, and she'll just sit on my lap and just say, what are you up to? Let me have a look what you're doing. And just, that's building up sexual currency. Things like suggestive texting. You can even send a message going, hey, I'm really thinking about you today, and not in a way of what's for supper. I'm thinking something else. And it creates that sexual currency. It doesn't necessarily have to lead to sex. So that's what we've got to realize. But it builds up a charge. And then eventually, something will happen Friday night, the kids have gone out, or they wherever, and things are happening. Not always kids out. I always don't talk like the kids are out, like they need to go anywhere. They're fast asleep in another room, but we'll talk about that just now. But then because of the sexual currency that you've created, there's something to draw from with each other. And then you can say, look, I'm really in the mood for you. And your wife will go, you know what, this has been such a week. I just feel this, I feel connected with you. I feel like there's something that we've got together. And then the moment happens, and then that is great sex. So the test to see if it is sexual currency or something else, is you need to ask yourself this question: would I do this with my auntie? And if the answer is yes, that's not sexual currency. If the answer is definitely no, that's probably sexual currency. So don't believe the myth when they say, oh, if you start working on Monday, taking the garbage out, all of that sort of stuff, but oh, you mess up on Friday, you don't have sex. I used to be a believer in this. But if you are doing chores to get sex, that's not sexual currency. Chores is being the man in the house, the husband, the partner, and same for the wife. If you think making your husband supper, although it does work for me, because they say, you know, the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. But in any case,
That's Kevin's
that's
love
my love
language.
language. You know, what
His
5
love
love languages? I've got 6. One is food. So I'm just throwing that out there too. Remember that.
Yes.
So yeah, so don't think that that's all you need to do to build up for Friday. No, you need to deposit your sexual currency into the bank account. And that's what you must be doing with each other all the time.
And then if we have a look at what makes good sex for us, there's 3 points of a triangle that make good sex. And the first one is psychological arousal. And this involves experiences or contexts, like when there's sexual innuendo between the two of us. Like if Kevin walks past me and there's only something I can hear, but there's a sexual innuendo. Like I love that kind of thing. How much connection you have, how much trust, love, is there visual stimuli? Is there attraction? Is there passion? Props,
Passion, so
yes.
important.
Props, if that's your thing. Sensuality, is there eye contact? Like eye contact, if you are on the one side of the room and your partner's on the other side of the room, and it just takes one look from them and you know exactly what they want and what they're thinking.
Whole conversation just in that
Yes.
moment. Yeah.
But it can be a sexual conversation on each side of the room. That kind of thing builds that sexual currency. The physical touch, that speaks for itself. It's that physical stimulation. It's the kiss. It's the pressure of touch. But how do you know the pressure of touch if you don't talk about it? How do you know if you like a hard pressure or a soft pressure? How do you know if you like to be kissed hard or kissed soft? And how the last point on the triangle is how present you are. It's how in the moment are you versus how distracted are you. And being distracted can be anything from being worried. It can be self-conscious. You don't feel good about your body, but your partner thinks you look fantastic. Are you anxious? Are you distracted? How are you feeling within yourself? What we're going to do now is we're going to share another screenshot. It's 2. There's 2 of these, and I want you to take a screenshot. We're going to share the screen. I want you to screenshot it. This is 2 pages of discussion points for the 2 of you to have when you've got a moment that it's just it's a quiet moment. You're ready to get talking about sex. You're ready to want to get into it. You see, there I go with my sexual innuendo. Okay, so here's the first page. We'll give it a few seconds before we share the second one.
Just so you can take the screenshots. We can make them available afterwards as well, then.
Well, we can post
Yeah,
it
we
on
can
the...
post it.
We'll send it to Kenneth.
We'll send it, yeah.
Anybody wants it,
If
they
you
can
want it.
just get
If
it from
your
Kenneth.
camera didn't work, you didn't take a screenshot.
We'll send it to Kenneth and he can forward it to you.
Okay, also open the next one.
There we go. That's the second page.
I'm sure everyone's got that.
And so we couldn't have a sex talk without discussing how sex ed was your sex ed kind of thing. How like, did you have a good sex ed? Were you brought up in a family that could talk about sex? How sex positive was your sex ed? And we have to be aware of the blueprint and how this affects our views of sex. So Kevin and I were brought up very, very, very differently. Hold on a second. No? Okay, we're there. We were brought up very, very differently. So I was brought up in like the Sound of Music family. There was the Von Trapp family and everything was on a whistle. And like a whistle was blown and everybody reported and looked like absolutely perfect. And your manners had to be impeccable. Like you practically went off to finishing school. And I remember I was driving with my dad the one day we were overseas. My parents were Belgian. And we were driving overseas and we're driving past a pasture and I went, oh goodness, it smells like someone farted around here. And my dad nearly crashed the car because he was like, Michelle, Young ladies, do not say the word fart. Young ladies, so I said, okay, Dad, well, what do they say? They made a pet. That's
Made a
what they
pet.
did. They made a pet.
Made a pet.
So like a cow makes a pet. Well,
So
there you
yeah,
go.
so I in this house go pet, 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 that sort of thing. Lots.
And so my parents didn't even speak to us about sex. We did not talk about sex. I learned about sex from either sex ed at school or from my friends or from my sisters, but I never spoke about sex. Even as an adult, I never spoke about it with my mom and dad. It was one of those taboo discussions. And Kevin, on the other side, he was brought up liberal. He was given a book on like sex
Birds
for
and bees,
boys,
yeah.
the birds and bees, and he lay on the couch reading this book. And any questions he had, he would ask these questions. And but that wasn't me. And so here we came together, and I was so shy. The lights had to be off. Like I had a 90 practically from here to the floor.
And she didn't understand why I was dragging the block and tackle from the garage into the bedroom. She was
Yeah,
like,
no,
what's going
It
on?
was a problem. It was a problem. Even when we on our honeymoon, like just before we went on our honeymoon, as I was getting dressed to go from the wedding to the honeymoon, we went home quickly to get dressed. And Kevin said, let me undo the buttons on your dress for you. And I was like, you can't do that.
No, she said that all wrong. I said, let me undo those buttons on that dress for you, something along those lines. And then she was put off.
Yes. I was like, no, you can't do that. Like, I have to get my mom or my sister. And he was like, we are actually married. I am
It's
actually
legal. I can do
allowed
this.
to do that.
Yeah.
And so how sex savvy are you from you? And that also bears a thing on how you can communicate about it. So if you talk about how your blueprint of sex was, it leads to communication.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is society dictates sex and sexuality to women all the time and to men
all the
differently. And so I'm going to share, Kevin's going to share a screen here. There's a couple of questions here. I'll start reading them for you. Oh, there they are. It says, so to the ladies, how many yeses would you say to these statements? Wanting or enjoying sexual pleasure is shameful, especially for women. Sex is about men's needs more than women's. Women are the gatekeepers, but not the drivers of sexual activity. Women's sexual pleasure is less important than men's. Looking good and a partner's satisfaction are more important than personal satisfaction. It is not desirable for women to direct the sexual experience in relation to their wants and needs. Once you've started down a particular route, it would be impolite to stop. How many can you say yes to there? Because I know for me, I can tick quite a few on what my views have been. And since I've read this, I've started noticing how I fall into quite a few of those categories quite often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also things like that when you look at it, society is dictated to us what is actually supposed to be sexual or not. So they did a study. I don't know if I'm sure you all are aware of a website called Pornhub. It's one of the biggest pornography distributors in the world. They did a study on 100 of the most watched, viewed videos on Pornhub to see what was being looked at. And the scenes indicating men having pleasure were 78% of the movies that we watched had men having pleasure. The scenes of women having pleasure were only 18%. And I think there's a 4% discrepancy. We don't know what they were looking at, but in any case, so it just shows the difference between men and women and how society dictates how sex is for the man's pleasure. It's not for the women's pleasure. And that is so wrong, that we have got that so skewed and so messed up. That should never be like that. So let's have a look at the way forward for all of us. Okay. So we need to be prioritizing sexual intimacy with each other, and sex, of course, and how we view it. We need to start talking about it more. We need to start expressing our feelings and our wants more. We should never try to squeeze sex in between brushing our teeth and going to bed, because that's not great sex. That's having sex for sex sake. And having sex for sex sake, I see value in the point of the connection of it. But we're talking about having great sex, having fantastic sex. So I would really say prioritize moments for it. Go to bed earlier. Switch the phones off. Stop scrolling. Stop looking at your to-do list, because that's going to mess with your mind later on. Like most things, when you take your eye off the goal and get really involved with the process of reaching the end, of getting on the journey, of staying on the journey, you'll enjoy it more. There'll be definitely more enjoyment for both of you. Okay. Please do not wait for the heat of the moment only. Of course, it's lovely when it happens, but don't only wait for the heat of the moment to happen before you start getting interactive with each other. Okay. And saying that in the heat of the moment is not the time to start throwing new ideas at your partner. This all needed to have been discussed way before you start throwing new ideas at your partner. So don't go and do an unexpected move or bring something into the relationship unexpectedly without having at least chatted to your partner
getting
about
the feel for it.
it.
I have to tell you, we were visiting with friends about 2 weeks ago, and I was telling them about this book that I was reading about the sexologist. And this particular sexologist, she says that you must be so free during intercourse that if you feel like growling or hissing or whatever it is, you must feel completely free to do that. And the guy turned to his wife and he says, please, can you give me a heads up first?
Oh, I laughed at that. Yeah, no shame.
Okay. And
so let's talk about, so if you have fetishes or if you have new ideas that you want to bring into the bedroom, please feel free to talk about it. Okay.
And if you're uncomfortable talking about it, send a WhatsApp, send an email. Say, hey, just checking. What do you think about this idea?
Yeah, because don't forget, sex between a couple must be mutual. The agreement must be, and it must be enjoyable for both parties. This is not one person's satisfaction over another's. If you are not both enjoying it 100%, then you're doing it wrong. It has to be for both of you. So on that note, there are some weird fetishes out there. And when you say weird, it's just weird because we don't like it. So, but if other people do, that's their business.
Yes, and so we don't want to judge
We're not
anybody
judging
for their fetishes.
No.
We really, really don't.
You do you.
But I want to read an excerpt to you from a book called How to Stay in Love by James Sexton. He's a famous divorce lawyer, and this is what he
Unfortunate surname for a divorce lawyer, Sexton, but anyway.
This is what he reads. He says, yet while feet don't do anything for me, they do for quite a few people out there. Some people are really, really into feet. Like feet are what they think of when they think of sex. There's a subculture of foot fetishes and an entire vocabulary for describing one's own feet or the feet of those with whom one desires interaction. So this is in inverted commas, okay? It's going to come with a translation. I will give you the translation, but this is the subculture. SWMW/long, smooth, clean peds into SWFW/short or long, high, natural peds for rubbing and mouth play. Okay. This is the translation. Identifying himself as a straight white male with long toes that were smooth, not hairy, and clean, odorless, he was looking for a straight white woman with short or long toes, no preference, but with high arches and natural, not recently pedicured toenails. The desired activities to be performed with or on the feet included rubbing and massaging them and sucking and licking them. P.S. Mouth play can also include biting and or nibbling off feet and or toes.
So there, you are all informed now of foot fetish. Feel free to bite, nibble, and lick.
I like the massaging part of it. Let's try.
I think you should massage my foot first and see if I like it.
No.
And we'll go from there.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so let's bring this to a close today. Okay. So the ways our partners accept us make it easier for us to accept ourselves if you ever look at it in that way. That's why it hurts so much when your partner rejects you or criticizes you, it's because you not only do you gain a critic, but you lose your biggest cheerleader. And that is so sad when that happens, because we don't want that in the relationship. Okay. So what is the essential difference between fleeting pleasure and lasting happiness? Attention. We've got to give each other the attention. So it's simply put, if you want to learn this phrase, if you walk away with nothing else today, just this, and of course the 2 desire factors, but in any case, the things that get your attention, I just want to get it right. The things that get your attention are the things that improve. I'm going to say it again. The things that get your attention are the things that improve. So what do you want to improve in your sex life? Give it the attention. What do you want to improve in life, in your relationship? Give it your attention. Give it your all. Give it everything. So please do that. Thank you very much. I hope you guys found something at least valuable in the sex talk. We didn't quite embarrass Kenneth that much, but yeah. So if you have any questions, please pop it in the chats and we'll stay on a bit longer and ask any questions that you might have.
Answer.
I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, and I
You
think if
might-
anybody who wants to ask an anonymous question, they can send it to me directly, either WhatsApp or in the chat. If you click on to everyone, you change that to Kenneth, then I'll repost it. I mean, just to help that out. Here's a question. I'm going to just repost the question in the chat so that everybody can see it there. But Kevin, it says, what are the stats on who initiates sex? Are men still the hunter?
Yes, men are still the hunter. I don't have the exact stats on me, but they are available. And yes, men do initiate sex a lot more than women, because it is just in our nature, first
And
of
they've
all.
got the spontaneous
And
desire.
we've got the spontaneous desire. So that when the spontaneous desire kicks in, we want to initiate straight away. We want to do that. And unfortunately, because the female doesn't have the spontaneous desire, they have more of a responsive desire, that they respond to our actions that we put in. So yeah, it's actually quite a high percentage. I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but it's a high percentage of men that initiate over women.
Okay. There's another one that says, how do we go back to soul-touching sex after everything it has just become bodily sex?
That is something that it's a process. It's not something that unfortunately happens overnight. But can I encourage you, whoever's written that question, is to start touching. Start physically just touching each other. Just spending time, even if you bath together, have a shower together, that doesn't lead to sex. And you know, we speak about a lot about times of affection without erection. And in this particular instance, that would be what you need to start focusing on, is more affection without erection. What we mean by that is, I mean, sometimes an erection is going to happen. What we mean is that it doesn't lead to sex, but you have this intimacy with each other, touching, lying naked, cuddling naked, just talking about it, even just talking about sex with each other will break that it's a physical sexual thing, and you can start to reconnect because don't forget, when we speak of soul ties, I mean, there's another subject completely for a different day. You know, there are different things, like you're talking about having soul sex, you know, good mutual, you know, relationship, intimate sex, you know, that comes with touching.
Where they talk about like metaphysical sex, whereas
sex.
like
Next level, you know, that comes with being intimately connected with each other. And that also comes with, I'm also just gonna say this here, just for you guys to realize also, if you want to have your wife have that kind of sex with you, you've got to make sure that the space that you are having sex in is safe. And I'm not talking about like safe, the locked doors are locked, you know, because someone's going to break in. I'm talking that your wife feels comfortable, relaxed. So let me give an example. So we work from home. I've moved the office to the house. The office is downstairs. Our bedrooms are all upstairs. Me as a man can easily go, woohoo, toodles, upstairs with Michelle, lock the door, woohoo, a quick 18 minutes, and everything will be lovely, okay? That's for me as a man. I can do that. There is no way my wife can do that, because she's thinking, is the domestic lady going to rattle the doorknob? Is Take-A-Lot dropping a parcel off? Is someone in the office going to need something and call for, you know? There's no way it happens that way. So you've got to create that safe environment. When I say safe, I want to talk about an intimate environment, a comfortable environment that she feels safe enough to let herself go to you. Because don't forget, we spoke about the mind and the thoughts. Her thoughts need to be on you and not on the children that might be knocking on the door, or the dog scratching, or all those sort of things. It's got to be on you. So
And the communication.
Communication.
That communication is one of the biggest things too.
Gotta talk
Like if
about
you
things.
can get communication up there, like half the battle's going to be won. Are there any other questions?
I
Kenneth?
hope that answers the question.
There's a lot of questions. They're just flowing in at the moment. So where were we? If you'd like to look at the chat there as well, you'll see some of them. It says, is there a good time of day to have sex?
Ooh,
So that's an interesting
Ooh.
one because everybody's clock is different.
yes.
Kevin loves sex in the
My
morning.
testosterone is at its maximum in the morning.
Most men.
Mine is like at its
Minimum.
lowest in the morning. I'm focusing on the day, what needs to get done, to-do list. I've got to do this. Sex is not on that list for first thing in the morning. It is not. But anytime later on from like 4 o'clock onwards, like I'm fine, but do not come to me in the morning. And like, it's just, and so Kevin knows. So like, we won't play around, but like I'll give him hugs and loves and stuff like that in the morning, and it gets the kettle boiling.
Sexual currency.
The sexual currency is being deposited. So you have to talk around. So for us, we have to find a compromise on that.
Yeah.
We have to, because Kevin's a morning guy. He's not a late at night kind of guy, but he will wake up late at night if that's what's on offer. But so we've got to find a compromise.
So that for us is the compromise, because Michelle does not function in the morning, even to wake up. She struggles to wake up. So it is pointless me even trying to push the point in the morning. So I've compromised to reach a point of going, hold on, even if I'm dead tired, Michelle has to just give me a nudge and she says, how's about, I'm wide awake. So rather compromise in that area, because then I'll be like, I'm on, you know. So, but you have to work around your life schedules and the way that things are. And you know what you do? You talk about it. You sit and you discuss it. How do you like your coffee? 2 sugars and milk. When do you prefer to have sex? Can we compromise on this? Can we talk about this? You know, maybe on a weekend we can get sex in the morning because we don't have to go to work and rush around and you know, so then we can have morning sex. But during the week, if you want to have sex, well, the morning's not going to work. I've got to get the kids to school. Let's have evening sex. Or you know, if you work from home, nip upstairs. No, I'm just kidding. That's not going to work.
Okay, so we have a question. If you are in abstinence due to addiction, how do you maintain intimacy? So now this is a difficult one, but it's actually an interesting one. So what happens with your dopamine? What happens with an addiction is you have your normal baseline dopamine runs at a normal level. You've got dopamine running as a hormone, a chemistry thing in your body all the time.
Yeah.
It runs all the time. You walk into a room and you'll suss out the room to see if there's anything.
Saber-toothed tiger.
Is there a saber-toothed tiger? Is everything safe? Is it? And so it runs normal. If there's a saber-toothed tiger, it'll spike, cortisol will kick in, adrenaline will kick in, but dopamine is the first thing that spikes. What happens with an addiction is the spike is very, very, very high, like majorly high, especially when it kicks in when you're going through puberty. And so you've got those hormones that are kicking in, it shoots up, reaches a high, but what happens then is you're constantly wanting that high. But what happens over time is it affects your base level of your dopamine. Your dopamine base level doesn't stay here anymore. It drops to be below baseline. And you in yourself know that it's dropped to below baseline. You know it. And so you will do anything to get it back to baseline. But so what you look for it is you look for those extreme highs on the dopamine burst. The lows are crashing low below baseline. And so the only thing that will restore your dopamine level back to baseline is that abstinence.
Abstinence, yeah.
So what happens is if you feed that you keep that abstinence. That abstinence has to be a minimum of 30 days for that baseline to return to normal. It has to be a minimum of 30 days. But then if you are feeding it, you're feeding it with the intimacy, you're feeding it with the kissing, you're feeding it with the touching, you're making sure that emotional connection is there, and it's hard. Abstinence for 30 days, especially on a sexual addiction program, is hard, but you're feeding that intimacy. When you have sex for the first time after that abstinence, that high is going to be so high, it's going to make your sex worth it. And your baseline is then restored. And so then you're feeding everything else from the group. You're feeding it with emotions. You're feeding it with talking about your feelings. Everything else starts coming back to normal. And so that is one of the best things you can do. You keep feeding that relationship, because that becomes the drug. The drug becomes this union together is what you want. And that is what you're going to be looking for. The pornography that is going to be empty compared to that.
Yes. I hope that answers that question.
Okay.
What are the impact of emotional neglect? Listen, the impact of emotional neglect on the sex drive is huge.
What's going to happen is you're going to be having sex for sex sake.
Sex for sex sake. It won't be, you won't, and also not then. If a person is not emotionally connected, I always say to this, if you don't touch your wife's heart, forget about touching her body. Because her heart and her mind, you've got to touch those first before you can even think of going anywhere near her body. So if you're neglecting those things, if you're neglecting emotional connection with your partner, whichever way, husband or wife, the intimacy is going to go out the window, because that person doesn't want to be intimate with you because you haven't connected with them. I mean, it's like, you know, Auntie Barb's visiting and you're wanting to have sex with Auntie Barb's. You go, and it's just wrong. You know what I'm saying? There's no connection. There's no nothing. It's horrible. So
it becomes purely a bodily function.
Purely a bodily function.
Nothing.
And then, to be honest, in my opinion, and the research that we've had to look at, if a partner is not engaged 100% with you in the sexual act, in having sex with you, then it's actually not worth it. Wait a while. Have sex the next day, or the next morning, or the next evening, when that person is engaged with you, because then the sex is great. It's not just sex.
And if there is none of that in the marriage itself, in the relationship, then you start by building that emotional connection. You start by getting to know each other again. You start by asking those questions that you asked when you were dating. So you start from basics and you build it up from basics to get that emotional connection again.
Okay, what have we got here? Please elaborate on how to avoid it as a chore. Instructs the husband should fulfill his marital duties to his wife, and likewise the wife should fulfill her marital duties to her husband. Is it normal for someone with porn addiction that states that he is not watching anymore to only have sex every second week that only lasts for maximum 5 minutes? Okay, so if we have a look at 1 Corinthians, I'm just going to delve into that for a second, 7:3, where it says, a husband should fulfill his marital duties, and so should a wife to her husband. Yes, there are marital duties, absolutely. But make it worth its while. Make it worth what you're going for. Don't have marital... for me, what is the point of having sex if you are just using that person's body to relieve yourself or give yourself pleasure? Sex is something that God has given us as a couple for us to enjoy together, to actually have that moment where it's blissful for both parties. So yes, don't withhold yourselves from each other, because that isn't good either. That's not good, because we don't want to have abstinence from each other. But please make sure that you are connecting in the right way, talking about things, emotionally connecting, working on that side of things, not just the sex side of things. You know, I always say sex is a tiny, tiny part of a marriage. Those of you who know me know I say this all the time, but it's like a blob, a little dot of super glue. You take a little dot of super glue, you put it between your fingers. Try and separate your fingers. You can't, because it's joined together by that little dot of super glue. That's what sex is. It's a small part of a marriage, if you think of it. Because how many hours of a day are you busy with other things? And how many 18 minutes a day are you spending? 18 minutes, maybe twice a month, or 2 to 3 times a month, according to the research. But it's that 2 to 3 times a month, that little blob, that little dot of super glue that's keeping your marriage together.
And it's also, remember in the chat just now, we mentioned that there were 2 scenarios. One of them where Kevin was like, just do sex better. Or the other one is like, I'm missing that connection with you. I'm missing that intimacy. How do we make it longer between us? Like what turns you on? Does this make you climax too quickly? Let's avoid that in the beginning. So it becomes the conversation around, I want more from you. I want that connection. I'm desperate for it. And it becomes more around that, where they see the emotion behind it, not just the act of sex.
Yes.
And also make sex fun, make talking about sex fun again. Like those cards from Temu, there are some fun ones in there. There's some
make you laugh.
seriously like raunchy ones in there. Like start bringing the fun back into sex.
All right, I can answer that. Let's see, is it normal for someone with porn addiction that states that, oh no, we did say that. Yeah,
Okay.
What if your partner does not want to talk about sex? They get triggered by it. Yeah, listen, that's an interesting point, because there's triggering when you look at other things, and there's triggering when you're talking to your wife about sex. If I'm talking to my wife about sex and I get turned on by her, we're talking about sex, and she gets turned on, we're talking about sex. That's a good thing to have.
We're wanting
We're
sex from
wanting
each
sex
other.
from each other. It's not a negative thing. Of course, it depends if you are you talking about in your abstinence stage, or you talking about in abstinence might be a bit difficult. You might have to navigate it differently.
Don't talk about it in abstinence.
Yes, wait till
But
after.
in abstinence, work on the connection.
The connection between
But
the two.
if it's not an abstinence thing, talk about
Talk about
sex
sex.
between the two of you. What
And-
do you like
and
if
if your partner-
I do? What do you like
Yeah.
if you do?
And if your partner gets triggered, enjoy it. It's a good thing, because they're there with you. They're not triggered in a negative sense. In fact, what's the word I like to use when it's a partner thing? Not triggered.
Intentional.
When they connect with each other, but it's not triggered. It's
know what you-
it's
I
on the
know what you-
responsive side of thing. But in any case, it's so I prefer to use a different word there, and I would encourage a couple to use a different word. So if the guy says to his wife, "Listen, talking about this is really it's making me in the mood for you," it's a different thing than saying, because if you're going to use the word reacting, because if you use the word triggered they associate with the recovery process. Triggered, they're using that word is he's triggered. He's now triggered. But he is now reacting to what's happening between the two of you, and it's with you and with him.
Building that
And it's building that bond between the two of you. So it's not a negative thing, but please find a different word than triggered that works for the two of you, and rather go, listen, I'm reacting in a way to you that I really feel, intense towards you. I hope that does that. Does not want to talk about sex. They say they get triggered, but also just don't want to talk about sex. Listen, if your partner doesn't want to talk about sex, talk about sex. Do what I did when we first got married. Let's talk about sex. No, I don't feel like it tonight. Well, I feel like it tonight. Let's talk a little bit about sex. And you start off with the small stuff. You start off with the easy stuff,
Got an idea.
Oh, good idea.
So we like to bath together.
Yeah.
Okay. And
If you ever met us, you would not understand how the Tetris works, but it works. We actually bath together.
yes, Kevin's a big dude.
I'm a big guy.
So, but we make it work. Okay. If you're going to have conversations about sex in the bath, there isn't a great escape route.
No.
Like you're in the bath together. Like you're not going anywhere.
They can't exactly say, well, I'm not talking about sex. You go, really? Well, I'm talking about it. Have a listen to what I've got to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
It does need someone to push the point.
Yeah. How do you communicate to your partner that emotional connection is an ongoing thing and not, great question. I'm going to read it out loud. How do you communicate to your partner that emotional connection is an ongoing thing and not a once-off act? Oh, great question. It is never a once-off act. Emotional connection is an ongoing thing, day to day, 24/7, 365. You need that emotional connection. Are you always going to be emotionally connected? Absolutely not. These days I don't like my wife, but I love her. These days she doesn't like me, but she still loves me. So those days there's not going to be much emotional connection because we're having a bit of a ding-dong with each other. But every time we aim to get back to that point of emotional connection. And emotional connection is not a key to having sex. It's not, I've got the key, let's try emotional connection, let's have sex. No, it's an ongoing thing. It's a building of relationship. This is what a marriage is about. It's about loving each other. It's about spending time with each other. It's about being intimate with each other. It's the whole package. So please do not think that intimacy or trying to build emotional connection is a let's do it this week and then I'm sorted for a year. No, it's an ongoing thing. And enjoy it. Because the more you enjoy it, gents, the more sex you will have. Let me reiterate that. The more you do your emotional connection, the more sex you will have.
You will be married.
Yeah,
You will
you will be married.
enjoy your marriage.
Yes, that was a beautiful, brilliant session, Kevin, Michelle. Thanks so much. Yes, you guys have outdone yourselves today. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I didn't blush once.
Good,
Wife
good.
did bump me under the table a few times. Yeah. Luckily, I was just like keeping straight face for everybody.